Hello and welcome to the 34th episode of When I Was Your Age, a podcast celebrating the careers, callings, and creativity of some friends of mine. I'm your host, Roland Parker, and as always, it is a joy, pleasure, and a treat to have you here. Today's guest is Celeste McDonald, which I'm super excited to catch up with her, see what she's been into, and learn about what she's doing. A little bit of housekeeping before we bring Celeste on, though. Make sure that you follow the Instagram at WIWYA pod. And thank you guys so much for the support. At the time of recording, we are at 1,386 followers, which means so much for you guys and all the support that you offer week in and week out. If you are listening for the first time, consider giving us a follow. You can do so on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Podcasts. If you've been here before, welcome back and make yourself at home. You can also watch episodes on YouTube if the visual game is more your jam, and you can find the links in the link tree in the Instagram bio to all of those places. Without further ado, we'll go ahead and bring Celeste to the stage. Celeste, how's it going with you? What you been up to?
Hi, Roland. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you too.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I had some tart cherry juice kind of in conjunction with like my magnesium drink last night, and it seemed to really like knock me out. I know people are really big on the tart cherry juice. It's like they'll make like a mocktail like situation.
I love that. I haven't heard about that, but I've heard about the magnesium kick. Everyone's on that.
Yeah, I'm big on it. It feels weird to have it like integrated so heavily into my routine now, but it really seems to help with my quality of sleep, I think.
Oh, okay. So like that versus melatonin, how do you feel?
It's the magnesium to me is a little more helpful for just like general like relaxation, whereas if I have too much of the melatonin, I tend to like wake up because my dreams are like so vivid and I'm like, like I'm just like too anxious now. Like there's like a sweet spot that you can find, but it's like, oh yeah, exactly. It's yeah.
I gotta try that then.
It's good. You gotta get on the magnesium kick. What about you? What have you been up to this week?
Well, it's Monday, so the first day of the week, everyone has their feelings about Mondays.
Sure.
Work is going good. I've just working a lot. I recently had a trip out to visit my sister and meet my new nephew, which was really exciting.
Ooh, cool.
But like ever since I've been back, I've just been like trying to get back into a routine, and like it just messed up my sleep being out there. And I know, like you said, I probably need to get more of that magnesium, but I don't know. I just feel like I'm still fighting. Like, okay,
yeah,
I'm still on vacation mode, but I need to get back into reality.
The travel like hangover almost of like trying to get back into a routine or just like settling back into your regular rhythm is so tough. Because I went on a work trip, not this past week, but the week before, and I just felt like all of what I was doing this past week was like trying to catch up from the previous one. Like that's all that it feels like.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're always playing catch up, and I'm like, okay, when do I get back to reality? And then just in time to do something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Another wedding or something,
Oh my gosh! Don't get me started on weddings. Yeah, this year. So the beginning of this year, I was like, okay, it feels pretty light on like how many weddings that we've got, because the year before or last year, it's we had quite a few. But I was like, okay, this year, like I don't think that we have all that many. And then as soon as I said that, it was like, boom, save the date, boom, invitation. I was like, okay, Here we go.
I'm so happy for them, but also like my calendar.
Yeah. And to be clear, if anybody wants me there to celebrate with them on that day, I will always say yes. So I'm very thankful to and privileged and honored to be a part of that.
Yeah.
But like you said, the travel piece, and it can really knock you around. So
I'm not the same way. I'm always like, oh, I'm there for a good wedding. I love it. It's so fun to see my friends, But yeah, the financial part doesn't really
Yep, sure. Yeah, 100%. Well, if you folks aren't, make sure that you go ahead and follow Celeste on Instagram. You can see that in there. So, did you have any? It's your handle is just the first name, last name. Did you have any like special handles like growing up or like interesting usernames?
I had such an embarrassing one when Facebook first came out. And
Okay.
I had just moved to Florida and I was like, oh, I'm going to go on Facebook and reconnect to all my friends from Indiana because that's where I had just moved from, 7th grade, and didn't have a dog. We never owned a dog really. And my username was Celeste _loves _Yorkies. And it still haunts me to this day. I'm like, it shows up on things and I'm like, get this out of here. Like
have you ever owned a Yorkie or has
we finally own Yorkies now, but that was like 10 years prior to owning a Yorkie. I manifested it for my family though.
Yeah, you were bringing it about. You were saying it's that one day in the future that's that we will be a Yorkie household. Like right. I love it. That's good. I'm going to start asking people about their usernames because I asked the previous guest Matt about his, so I'm excited to start doing that. Yeah.
I know there's so many like old Hotmail ones and
I feel like people our age too are kind of in the sweet spot for some of the more uncomfortable, cringeworthy kind of usernames and leading into that. And now we've kind of rehabilitated ourselves into like fun and quirky or like first name, last name, like with an underscore or a period or something like that to kind of like rebrand in that sense, which is fun. All right. Well, I have some get to know you questions that I'd love to dive into. We ask everybody these, but where are you from and where do you currently live?
Well, I kind of touched on that a little bit. I was born in Tennessee and then our family relocated us to Indiana. So that's kind of where I'm from. I'm kind of from all over, but I grew up in Indiana, cornfields, Hoosiers, And then we relocated to Florida when I was about like middle school age. So now I've been here for like the longest portion of my life. And I still don't consider myself a Floridian, but I am.
Yeah.
So I'm from Florida.
Gotcha. It's excellent. And what do you do?
I work at an HIV clinic. It's a primary doctor's office for people who live with HIV, and I'm a case manager there. So we kind of juggle around. We do a lot of different things. So I can probably get into that a little bit later too.
Yeah, that's exactly. You've got it just right. We'll talk about that more later. But how old are you?
I am 28. I always forget. I think like I'm 27 still, but I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh.
It's okay. So here's my thinking in this is I like have felt like I'm 23 and 24 for like the past like 4 years. Like that's like mentally what I kind of feel like. So and that's I think part of the reason why I lose track so easily. But it's funny that you say that because I've had a string of like a whole bunch of episodes where everybody's like kind of unsure. They're like, it's this, I think. Yeah. It's you have to
wait, I think
you have to look.
I just had a birthday. So I was like, oh yeah, I'm 28. But
nice. Okay.
Going into that birthday, I was like, am I turning 28 or 27?
Love that. That's great. Well, happy birthday. When was your birthday?
February 7th.
Nice. Well, happy belated to you. What piece of media are you currently enjoying? So book, music, TV, podcasts. What are you kind of into right now?
I kind of do it all. So sometimes I'm depending on what I'm in the mood for that day. So like I got into reading last year, so I do like to read. My go-to is kind of like a self-help book. So currently I'm reading this one. It's called Ikigai. It's a Japanese word for like, lifelong happiness. And so it's a really cool book to see how people in Okinawa live. And just kind of their way of life and different ways of thinking and what brings them happiness. So that's kind of cool. But then when I'm more in the mood for something just to turn my brain off, because, sometimes you just like need to turn the brain off.
To flush it out.
Yeah. I watch like a bunch of different shows kind of just in the background. I always have like New Girl or Schitt's Creek. Those are probably like my go-tos, but or Young Sheldon. I've just been watching that lately. So
nice. We're a big New Girl household, as I'm sure you know. But yeah, that's one of our love languages. Yeah, it's so good. I chuckle out loud at least once an episode. It's so good. The quick like humor with it too. I'm like, gosh, this writing is so funny. I love it. It's probably the show that I've seen more than any other show at this point, just for how many times we've rewatched it.
Oh yeah, me too. I don't even know how many times I've rewatched it.
Yeah. What is something you'd consider a luxurious necessity? Kind of integrated into the routine. Maybe elevate some part of your life, but you wouldn't be able to give it up per se. What is that to you?
So I was thinking about this, and I think I have a couple. So I have a special kind of contact lenses that you sleep in overnight, and they kind of correct your vision so that you can see 20/20 throughout the day. And that really helps because I don't have to wear daily contacts and I don't have to wear glasses. But I could, if I had to, give it up and like wear glasses or regular contacts.
Yeah.
But that is definitely one of my necessities that I like. And then my other is my bed. I paid a lot of money for a nice Tempur-Pedic mattress, and it has like a cooling. It's like a temperature controlled, so that's really essential in Florida. So
yeah, the cooling piece I think would be the big part of that. But going back to the contacts, I have explained your situation to so many people before, because I'm like, listen, I have a friend and she wears her contacts at night and it shapes her eye, and she doesn't have to wear them for like during the day. It like puts the shape of
the cornea.
So the shape of the cornea corrects that and puts it in the right mindset, in the right headspace. And then throughout the day, she doesn't have to wear them. They're like, that seems so fake. I'm like,
it's not real. I explain it all the time, like at least once a week. And people are like, you're not supposed to do that. That's like the go-to response I get. And I'm like, it's okay.
Actually, it's really bad to sleep in your contacts.
I was like, it's okay. These are meant to be.
No.
And they try to like disagree with me. And I'm like, it's okay.
You are the only person that I have ever known that has that setup. Like I have monthlies. And so, but I pretty much like exclusively wear contacts. Like it's very rare that I'm wearing glasses. But
yeah, it's kind of cool. Like my cousin, she's an eye doctor. So when we moved to Florida, we got set up with her, and she was trying out these new contacts. They're called CRTs, or corneal refractive treatment. And so she tried them on me and my sister, and she was like, okay, you guys are going to be my guinea pigs, test them out, and we'll see how they work. And we still wear them to this day. So you only have to replace them probably like every couple of years. Or if you lose them, I have lost one before, like in the London airport. It was terrible. I was on the floor looking around and I couldn't find it. So I was just,
oh man, What you were taking it out in the airport? Like how did you lose it in there?
I was flying to London for my senior trip, and we slept on the plane. So when we got there, it was daytime, and it was like, okay, go. So I, slept within my contacts on the plane, and then I was taking them out in the airport bathroom, and one of them it popped out and I could not find it.
Oh man. So
I had to wear like a daily and then like have no contact.
It's good that you had that backup though. That would have been really, really sucky.
It was quite the experience.
Okay. What do you have any bits that you're doing, running jokes that you have with yourself or close friends or anything like that? Tell me about that.
I don't know. I'm kind of quirky, so I do a lot of weird stuff that my friends point out, and they're like, and then I notice it. One thing that I'm doing a lot is I'll be in the middle of a conversation with somebody. It can be funny, serious, whatever. And they'll say something. And whatever it is, it's like the exact words from a song lyric. And I start singing that song. I'm just like, it's like an itch I have to scratch. I just like start singing that lyric. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, okay, and you were saying? And I go right back to the conversation.
Just like, do you ever feel like a plastic bag? Is that just interrupting? Like, yeah, that's good.
Or like, yeah, just say something. Say something. I'm giving up on you.
That's good. Oh man, so you just can't help yourself. You have to intervene. Yeah. You have to say it. Yeah.
And it's happened in my professional life too. And I'm like, oh, so I gotta catch myself like holding back. That's what I'm like, okay, I need to. Or sometimes I just let it out and they laugh or they don't.
Nice. I love that. Oh man, that's good. It's interrupting with the songs. That's perfect, because our next question is one that we ask and we compile all the answers into a playlist. So if you had the opportunity to replace the national anthem with any song on your playlist, what would that be? Tell me a little bit about why that's your choice.
So kind of with like my music choices all over the spectrum as well. I don't know, like I listen to some like Irish pub rock playlist, and then also musicals and like country. So maybe like the national anthem.
Mm-hmm. I thought here's something that kind of helps me frame it too, is like if you envisioned yourself at a sporting event and everybody, like the announcers like coming over the loudspeaker, like it's ladies and gentlemen, please remove your hats and rise as you're able for our nation's for our country's national anthem. And like what do you envision like playing in that moment that's not the Star Spangled Banner?
I think it would be kind of cool if everybody just like started singing together like the theme song of The Greatest Showman. Like, This is the greatest show. I don't know. That, or like, going deep into like finding a meaning of a song. Like, I don't know. I like the Harry Styles song, Treat People with Kindness. That's also kind of one that I think a lot of people could get behind, but it's also just like definitely random and weird.
It's I think The Greatest Showman is going to be an excellent addition to that.
Yeah, it's such a bop. I jam in my car and I'm like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the Housers are really big on The Greatest Showman. Oh, and if I'm misrepresenting the Housers, I'm so sorry.
They'll correct you.
Yeah, it's they'll reach out and they'll say so. I'll offer a retraction. And then last question here is, how do we know each other?
Well, we know each other from Camp Airwood back in the day. I don't even know what year I started working there because it seems like forever ago. But then also when I start thinking about memories, I'm like, that was just like yesterday. Mm-hmm. So it's got that weird the aspect of it. But yeah, we had a lot of fun at camp. We were, all of us counselors, we got together and we were, no personal space for 6 weeks, and we got to know everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. Some of my fondest memories and my greatest friends, like overall, it's just very special time. And I think a lot of people have that in the camps that they worked at, but you didn't have it like we had it at our camp. You're not as
ours was definitely the tops.
Yeah,
like all the skits, like you always, Roland, your cabin always had the best skits. And no matter how hard anybody else tried to like beat you guys, no, your cabin hands down. I was like crying, laughing every time. The one that I'm thinking of is like the car salesman, or like the one where you guys you like acted as the counselors. The campers had to act like the counselor.
It was so good. Here was my secret with me and Alex especially. We would have the campers were like the punchline, like they were, like in a camp skit, there's you set up with your premise, and then there's like a big like aha, like all together where we're laughing like it's a I'm Pebbles and you threw me in the pond. Yeah, like that's like it's a like
that
it's
was
a,
our cabin. We could never.
yeah. It's a my. So like, why are you wet? Like I'm Pebbles. Like yeah. So and they were throwing pebbles in the pond. There's like the lead up of that, but like we would set it up like that. But Alex and I were just like playing or like riffing off of each other and like, I'm
and
just
off the kipper sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. That was so fun. I think about that often.
Skits and then like porch time, I think, were some of my favorite memories, and just kind of like ranting about the experiences we had that day, good and bad, but like
just the general debrief. It's funny too because I have a similar experience with Tabby and our kids of like we're like they like get them down and then we're like, wow, that was a challenge. That day was difficult. And it's like getting a moment to like talk to another adult. Not that you don't really love having the interaction with campers and your kids and stuff like that, but it's it's a particular kind of draining. So yeah, love that. Well, awesome. So I'd love to get a better understanding of what it is you do, how you got into that. So I guess let's start with how exactly did you get into this role, and we'll kind of go from there, kind of define what that looks like. So tell me how you got started.
Okay. So when I was in college, I was in the social work program, and part of the mandatory requirement for that to graduate is to do an internship. And for your senior year, you need to do like X amount of hours and whatnot. So we all signed up for an internship. My initial one that I chose fell through the day before school started, senior year. Wow. So my counselor was like, oh, let me call all these people to see who didn't get an intern that still is taking an intern. And I got McGregor Clinic. And so I knew nothing about HIV. I got in for the interview and they were like, yeah, let's do it. So I kind of started there as an intern that I didn't think it would go anywhere. I was just like, cool, it's going to get my hours and I'm going to graduate and that's going to be that. And then I was there all senior year. I fell in love with like all my coworkers and everybody there and just like what we do as a whole. And yeah, I've been there ever since.
Nice. Okay. Well, take us a little bit through then your like day-to-day function. What exactly are you doing in your work?
So as a case manager, we only see some clients. We don't see everybody that comes and gets services on the medical side. Basically, we work only with people who need help with either they don't have insurance and so they need help getting connected to medications for lower free cost, or their insurance, it doesn't cover their medications or lab visits or, things like that they need. So that's kind of what we have programs for. So a day-to-day, we have clients on our schedule, we meet with them, and we have like each program is an eligibility. You get their income and like household size and all that stuff. So it's a lot of paperwork, but basically just getting them enrolled into the correct program that they need. And then after that, you just follow up with clients. So each case manager, we have roughly like 60 to 70 clients on our caseload. Oh, and we meet with them annually or as often as they need.
Nice. Very cool. And so you may have mentioned this or touched on it, but what exactly did you go to school for, and how did you see the overlap? Because that's a part of the requirement was an internship, but what were maybe some of the other pieces that kind of led into how you do your everyday work?
Mm-hmm. So I did social work as my major, and while I was in my core classes in college, I thought, okay, I can see myself being like a counselor, mental health, that kind of track. And then We did a lot of role playing as well, like in the classroom. So we had to act as the therapist and the client and vice versa. And I just felt really comfortable doing that. And then I saw that happening in our clinic at McGregor. And when you meet with clients, you're not just going over their income and their household size. You're going over like, it's essentially like a biopsychosocial assessment about their life and about their, sexual history and all the things that are part of the risk factors that can go into that.
wow.
We do a lot of education pieces and, excuse me, a lot of our clients that the case managers work with are suffering with many other external factors, not just their,
Sure.
HIV. It's like homelessness. We see a lot of food insecurities. They need help paying their rent. They're in between jobs. They access to dental care. It's a lot of, various things like that.
Yeah, gotcha. A
So,
lot
like,
of like compounding kind of issues like playing off of each other. I'd imagine that's
yeah. So like, even though I'm not a mental health counselor, I feel like I'm still getting that one-on-one with the client, and like, they're touching my life, and I build those relationships, and they can call me on the phone anytime. And it's that, camaraderie, I think, that I was looking for.
Yeah, exactly. I like what you said too about like it's not the exact like medical component or mental health component, but there are like so many different areas that you're touching. So like with that, was there anything that you kind of surprised yourself with, like how good you were at it? Like you mentioned that you were really comfortable in some of these like role playing sessions in college, but like when it came down to the practical application, was there anything you're like, oh, like I didn't realize that I had a knack for this?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nerve-wracking, like at first when, me, a newly college grad, is asking, say a 60-year-old about his sexual history. For me, that was kind of uncomfortable at first, but after, getting to know them, that's not the only question you're asking. You're getting to know all about their lives, their families, their jobs, and what they're struggling with. And they kind of feel like they can confide in you. So that's kind of what I think I'm good at. I'm like a good listener, and I can just be that comforting listening ear for them. Even if I'm not finding solutions or an answer all the time for them. A lot of times people just want to be heard. They just want to vent. And a lot of times I see within our clients specifically is we're the only people who know their status. It's like there's still so much stigma surrounding HIV, and it's like their family might not know, their best friend might not know, and they've, might have had this diagnosis for 12 plus years. And it's still like I'm the only person that they feel like they can talk to. So that's a big part of building that trust and that comfortability. So that was pretty easy for me to pick up on, like, right away.
Nice. That's really cool. And you mentioned the stigma piece. I wonder, even as even we're pretty far removed from like the initial kind of wave of the AIDS pandemic and like all of the stigma that came with that. And there's it's a pretty big history with how that has developed and changed in the way that people talk about the illness. But have you seen people kind of approaching you differently or reacting differently to you, like just knowing that like that's the field that you're working in?
All the time. Even though we think, oh yeah, the stigma is not there anymore, it really is. And I think a lot of it has to do with lack of education. I think back to my high school experience and like, sexual health class. And we basically were taught abstinence. And if you do have sex before marriage, then you can get AIDS. And like, that was basically the end. And I didn't even know what HIV was when I started working here as a senior in college. I just felt so uneducated myself, and learning about it and just being able to, educate people in my personal circle, especially my family and close friends. I think that's been so beneficial to, killing that stigma and just normalizing conversations that we should be having. And one of them specifically that comes to mind is, you know, I'm not going to say anybody's names or anything,
Sure.
but I have people in my close, you know, circle when I first started working there and was like, hey, yeah, I'm working at an HIV clinic. Their face immediately changes and they're like, aren't you scared you're going to get it? And that kind of like took like, it gave me pause because I was just like, I never thought that way at all. But then now my go-to response, because like now I've been there for going on 6 years and I still get that question from a variety of people that I encounter. Like, and now my go-to response is, well, I'm not having sex with my clients and I don't share needles with them. So no.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you for answering that for one, because I really appreciate that even though that you're not that's not the medical situation that you specifically are dealing with. It did not really surprise me that there were people who the stigma had kind of transferred to you just by association. And I imagine that being your work and your livelihood, that's got to be challenging in a lot of ways. But it seems like you've kind of pivoted to like an education kind of stance in helping get a better understanding out there to some of those folks. So that's a cool thing. Was there anything that you found that was really challenging initially, or that you weren't so good at that you had to develop and kind of grow? So tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's an ever changing process, you know, as I work here longer, as I encounter new people, you know, it's just human behavior. So you'll always think that you've seen it all or you've heard it all. And then somebody surprises you. And I'm like, oh, no one's ever said that to me before. So like when I first started working there, I had a couple people who might have been disappointed because we couldn't provide the necessary service that they were looking for, or their income, like they didn't qualify for the program based on income. And they would just yell at me over the phone. They would like, you know, just kind of attack me. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I took that to heart. I took that very personally. I would, you know, get off the phone and then I would just kind of sob. And I was like, why would they say that to me? And I had to learn. It took lots of this happening over and over again for me to learn that it's not about me.
Yeah.
It's whatever they're going through and it's a projection. So that definitely took time. And once I kind of built that thick skin and like, okay, if they're going to yell, I know how to talk them down now. I know how to de-escalate. At first I was just like, why are they taking this out? I was so mad. I was so offended. And then I'm like, it's not about me. So a lot of times I just remind myself, like the voice in the back of my head, sometimes I'm like, it's not about you. It's not about you, Celeste. Like, you know, and that does help me to just kind of move on. And
yeah, even in like identifying that pattern and like coming to that understanding, it's got to be hard because it's a volatile situation. Like tensions are high, people are yelling at you. Like that's something that I think that I would really struggle with in that situation, is like not taking to heart that people are, you know, so that they're not mad at you specifically in that situation, and they're not they're just like the vessel. You're the vessel for their frustrations in that moment. That's such a hard thing, man. Yeah, but it's cool that you've taken and been able to identify that as a pattern and say like, all right, I'm gonna give myself some pause here. I'm gonna let them get it out, and then from there help them to move on from this frustration.
Don't get me wrong. We do have people who, like, regardless of what you say, you can say whatever, and they're still going to just come at you like that. Where like, I can either hang up the phone and call them back again and say, are you calmed down now? Or I can just be like, okay, well, you have a right to complain. So do you want to, you know, complain to the higher ups? By all means, you have that right. And then give them that power, because essentially they feel powerless when we're telling them like, we cannot provide that service or something, you know, and kind of giving them back that power piece. They're like, either, yes, I will, or they say, no, it's okay. I know you're trying to do your best, like whatever. And then I get both responses sometimes. So if they want to complain, by all means, call the CEO and you can talk to them about what we're not doing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, in thinking about that, in passing that along or giving them it, in giving clients that tool as a resource, I imagine that you'd have to be able to have a good relationship with your coworkers, managers, bosses, to know that like that is something that you're going to be doing and doing frequently. So tell me about how that dynamic, like how do you rely on your team, managers, stuff like that?
Well, I can share a story that I did have a client. She was working with me for a little while, and sometimes you don't click, and you can't force it. And at the end of the day, like, I'm providing a service, I'm just doing my job, and it's okay if we don't have that like bond that I might have with other people that I work with. And so I was trying to like understand and like work with her and like just, she came from a different area and was like, oh, well, back where I'm from, I got all of these services. And I'm like, okay, well, in Fort Myers, Florida, we don't have all of those resources. So kind of like breaking bad news to her. And then she just didn't like what I was saying. And everything was like, let me talk to your supervisor. Let me talk to your supervisor. And I said, okay. So I went right to my supervisor and I said, hey, this is the situation. And they're not understanding and whatever. And she was like, all right, well, I'll talk to her. And she ended up moving her to her caseload. And and like, because I guess when she talked to my boss, she was like, I don't ever want to work with her again. And she was like, okay, I'll work with you. And like,
okay, I'll work with you. Yeah.
If you have the option to either stay and work with one of the case managers or leave and find resources somewhere else, And so she didn't want to leave. So now she works with my boss, and I had that comfortable relationship with my boss where I could go to her and she had my back because she knew it wasn't me. Like, I gave her the facts. I said, this is what's happening. And she even heard it firsthand working with the client and speaking to her directly. So it's one of those things. It's not about me, even though she's like, you're the worst. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah. And that's something that is so valuable in just any kind of work environment that you're in. But I imagine that it's especially more important in your line of work because of, the nature of what you're doing, the seriousness. Like, people are often, there's a dignity element. There's the power piece, like you mentioned, like they're seeking like some piece that they can hold on to, and emotions are high. You're often the punching bag for those situations. So it's cool that you have someone who's willing to support you in that instance. It, I imagine, would take a lot of the pressure off in that instance.
Well, and in that specific situation, like, we don't give everybody to our boss because, they have a limited caseload, so they can do all of their other administrative duties. But like, in that situation, she's just complaining. I want to speak to whoever's in charge. So the way that my boss was like, okay, I'll work with her because there's no other one higher than me. So she can't complain after that. So that worked with her in that specific situation. Other people, if they want to complain, then they do. And I still work. I've had clients that complain, and then we've worked through it, and they're still working with me, and they're like some of my best peeps,
Nice.
So it's just something that we work through together, and we have to practice that empathy and like be sensitive to the situation. And it's something that we practice every day, because a lot of times you take on a lot and you might want to respond like a a way that you're not supposed to. You could get fired for or something. And it's just kind of like, all right. So we do practice it every day. It's not like I've mastered this skill.
100%. So and so how have I'm wondering about other ways that you've seen yourself grow and develop, because you mentioned the element of being able to identify it's not about me, it's at their level of frustration here. Are there other areas that you could point to that you're like in your time at the clinic, you've seen yourself improve, get better, grow, develop just as a professional?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another part about what we do as case managers is we're patient advocates. So we have to advocate on behalf of them to our higher ups for certain approvals for funding and things like that, or we call other doctors' offices that we're referring to. It's like specialists, or we need somebody to get a scan and we're paying for it because it's part of the funding program that they're enrolled in. So a lot of that and just like the advocacy part of it, I was very uncomfortable at first doing that. Like I hated talking on the phone to people I didn't know. And I was like really just not confident. And that definitely took some time and practice. And I can remember when I first started working there, I would like type up a script of what I was going to say before calling, and then like reading it from the script, and then realizing after I did that for a while, I was like, oh, I can go off book, and then, just throw in my, improv or whatever. And then now it's just a conversation. It's so easy. It's so effortless that like we make the joke all the time, like, okay, well now we have to case manage ourselves. We have to call our own doctors and schedule appointments. And like, it's just,
yeah.
I don't want to do that for myself. I'll do that for anybody else, just not for me.
Yeah. Well, that's really nice though, that you had that as that it was a point of anxiety. That's something you were really uncomfortable with, and you found a way to I don't know, support yourself, like prepare yourself for like the harshness. I have always hated the like phone calls, like especially when it comes to like setting up an appointment or anything. Like I remember my parents like charging me with like ordering a pizza, and I was like, I don't want to, like, I just like it was like, I don't know, like why I'm like trying to be brave. I like can't do it, but like I can order a pizza now.
Okay, good.
But if they've got a website that we can order through, then I'm probably going to do that before I get on the phone. Yeah. So I need to work through that.
It's funny because like I'm the youngest case manager that we have, and everyone else ages range from, I'm 28, so up to, 55, 56. And some of these case managers, like they've worked in other fields, or like they've been a case manager just in other organizations, like since I've been alive, basically. And I definitely learn a lot from other people, and like seeing how they do their workflow. And when I first started, I shadowed everybody else to kind of see what they were doing and how they made phone calls. So I've definitely adapted a lot of that and then made it into my own. And a part of that advocacy piece is sometimes like I said, you're advocating for your client. So if I'm calling a new provider that we haven't necessarily worked with before, but I'm trying to explain our funding program and like promising them that they're going to get paid, it's just not insurance, they're super skeptical and hesitant. And sometimes they'll just shut it down. They'll say, no, we don't do that. No, we don't do that. And so part of that advocacy piece is like, okay, well, let me explain it to you. Like, and then kind of thinking of different ways to, find a loophole, see if they'll work with us. And so that is a big part of what we do. And that was very uncomfortable when I first started.
It's like a sales piece. Like you have to like pitch it to a provider in that way. Wow, that's like you're covering so many different elements of like just professional function. Like I
wear lots of different hats, and I never know which one I'm going to wear that day.
Yeah. No, that's wild. I mean, it's like very like HR generalist and like call center and like customer service and like sales and like all of these like different things kind of bundled into one.
Mental health.
It's like an element of like counseling and like, it's wow. I didn't really think of all of the ways that those fields would interact in one role. Like I could see definitely how a clinic or or other service like that would, they would have all of those functions, but I didn't really think about one person handling all of that for one client. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's a lot sometimes. It's very exhausting work, but also very rewarding. And we're all empaths. We all have a heart for our clients. And at the end of the day, that's what keeps us going, I think.
Nice. I love it. What do you think it is in the future for you? Do you imagine stepping into similar but different kind of roles, or doing this kind of long term, or is it kind of vague at this point? What do you kind of see for yourself in the field that you're in?
Well, for the past couple of years, I've been kind of struggling to see what's next. And I say that because case management it's very hard to move up. It's like you're either a case manager or you're in a leadership position over the case managers. And so at our clinic, those positions just have always been filled. And so the only way to move up is if somebody were to leave. And so at least for the past couple of years, I've been okay, I've gained a lot of experience. I'm ready to be challenged in a different way. And I've been kind of feeling, pulled in a couple different directions. And I actually just got a promotion because my supervisor moved. She gave us her 2 weeks and was like, hey, I'm moving back to be with my family. So she left and that position kind of became available. And they kind of tweaked it for me because I'm not stepping in directly to the supervisor role, but they're giving me admin duties and more responsibilities so I can still support our team, but then also still have my caseload as well. So that's just happened last month. So it's very new, it's very fresh. And like I said earlier, I'm getting back from vacation. So I'm still just, I'm very exhausted, but it's a good learning curve right now.
Good. Yeah. Well, one, congratulations, because that's cool to have that opportunity, and cool. That's also a really cool opportunity that they would have the flexibility to kind of, work with you in this transition-y kind of influx kind of role where they're combining some of the things, offloading some of the admin stuff onto you and giving you that opportunity. So I think that speaks to the level of trust that they've got in you. That's a great thing. That's awesome. So that you've started in doing this already, or that's kind of coming down the pipe, or where are we at?
Yeah. So timeline. It was the end of February. I was leaving to go visit my sister in Oregon, and my supervisor was moving, and so I got 2 weeks of crash course training because she was leaving, and they were like, all right, well, yeah, now's the time to ask all the questions and learn as much as you can, because once she's gone, that's it. So that was kind of high pressure. And the main thing with my new job, I'm a senior case manager. So eventually the goal is to step into that supervisor role, but they're it's like a stepping stone. So part of my main responsibility is auditing. So we're auditing the other case managers as well as myself every time we do our eligibility with our clients. So it's a whole packet of paperwork, and there's a lot that goes into it. So with our clinic, we work underneath a lead agency, and they report to the state. So that's where our funding comes from. And that lead agency audits us. So we do our internal audits to make sure that we're A1 when we send them off to get audited.
Okay.
Because nobody wants to come back and be like, oh, the lead agency audited us and we have all of these errors we're doing wrong. That just looks bad. So our clinic does these internal audits, and it's it is a lot, but it's great. I actually kind of like doing it, and I'm all right, cool. I'm getting into a flow of it. And it's just the weirdest part about that is auditing myself because I'm still doing the paperwork and the eligibility. And then when it comes to audit day, every Tuesday is audit day. So I'm auditing myself, and then I'm slapping myself because I, made weird error that I'm like, I've never done that before. Why would I do that? So that's just kind of funny.
That's so funny, and it's like a unique perspective to kind of look. What I wonder. So, how are you looking at just like it's I'm having a tough time like imagining what kind of lens you're looking at like your own work through, where you are identifying the problems and issues. Because I feel like if I made the mistake already, I'm probably gonna have a harder time like pinpointing it like on the back end. But I guess maybe not if you've been removed from it for a week. So
part of like just the audit, it's basically a checklist. So
okay.
it's like this. I have 2 screens. Love a good 2-screen desktop.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So one screen I have the audit, and then the other one is like the checklist. So I'm basically going through each client's chart from like the week prior. So each person that came in and the case manager met with them and did this eligibility, that's what we're auditing. So I have a checklist, and then I just go into that client's chart, and it's like, okay, was this done? Was this done? No. Okay. So that's kind of how I'm able to remove myself from being like, like not marking my own thing wrong, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I get you. So like a quality control of like, we want to make sure that there's uniformity in the way that all the client interactions are happening or different stuff like that. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah.
Everything is paperwork based. So that goes back to the state. And it's just like, a lot of it is taxing. And we wish that, back in 2019, we went quote unquote paperless, and we're still doing all of this paperwork. How they mean paperless is we no longer have like the paper files, but everything is still done on paper, and then we're scanning it into the computer. So it's on like an electronic file.
Right.
So it still is lots and lots of paper.
But I feel that. I'm in human resources, so I'm no stranger to paperwork and forms and different stuff like that. And it is the least fun part of my job for me. Tabby loves paperwork. She loves to fill out a form. She loves to like sit there and sign an initial. I am not a fan of it, and I don't like to look at it, and I don't like to read through it. But yeah, it's just one of the more like mind-numbing experiences, I think. But
I feel like that's also like kind of a skill that I didn't want, but now I have. Is like going through paperwork. Like, if like in my personal life, if my friends or roommates or parents need help going through like insurance documents, I'm like, well, let me have a look. And it's not like I work in insurance, but I know how to navigate. I know how to like read these documents now and understand what is needed. And I think that is a good skill to have. But I'm like you. I'm kind of like in the middle of you and Tabby. Like, it's part of my job. I do like, do it. But do I like it? Not really. But then I also like have to sign everything. And I feel like the more papers I sign back to back, the sloppier my signature gets. And I'm just like,
100%.
By the end of it.
Yep, I totally feel that. No, but that is cool that you've seen like some real life application that you can take and pivot and turn around to like helping out some friends. Like, hey, like let me at least try to navigate this. I don't know the exact system, but I could probably there's some transfer of skill that I can apply here. I always love to see that. That's good. Well. That's all the questions that I have. However, we have a tradition of guests asking guests questions. So what I've got for you is a question from our previous guest, which is Matt McNaughton from episode 33. And he's got a question for you, which is, what's the best example of hospitality you've ever seen? So he's rooted in that hospitality field. He's opening up a restaurant and pub. So I wanted to extend that opportunity to him, and then you'll get to ask a question to somebody else. But what is that to you? What's the best example of hospitality you've seen?
I've seen a lot. I feel like hospitality is so broad. Like you could go to like hotels or restaurants or, what have you. But I think the most recent thing that just popped into my head, last weekend, I went to Miami with a couple of friends, and we went to Bad Bunny's new restaurant in Brickell, and I've never been to a restaurant like that. Like, it was totally out of my element. And the service of that place, Roland, I'm telling you, I've never been to a restaurant that was like that. Let me give you an example. We're sitting there. We ordered our food. We got appetizers. They came out at different times. And, you know, I took the paper wrapper off of my chopsticks and it was sitting there next to my plate. And they came around and like removed that paper. And then like anytime I took a sip of my water, they were refilling it.
Nice.
I got up to go to the bathroom.
Just very attentive.
Yeah. I got up to go to the bathroom and I came back and like my napkin was like refolded into like the fancy like folding. And like my silverware was like back to where it was supposed to be. And like, yeah, it was... I used to work in the service industry, and I was like, I've never witnessed this. And I loved it. It was out of my element. It was definitely like awkward at first, but then I was just like, I didn't have to worry about anything. And it was so attentive, and it definitely made that experience. And the food was obviously amazing, but the service, I just could not stop reading about it.
Nice. That's cool. So it's Bad Bunny's restaurant, and the name of it is
Gecko.
Gotcha. I'm not familiar. Well, I don't frequent
Miami. I wasn't either. It was. I don't
either. Love it. No, but I've gotten into like situations before. You mentioned like the filling up the water really proactively. I've seen people kind of like almost taking it personally and like getting in a duel with the waiter of like looking at them and like trying like downing like their water to like get to the bottom. And stuff. But the silverware component and like rearranging like the napkin and everything, that is like very different from like anything that I've seen before. Like like being, it's like, can I get anything out of your way? It's like you're refilling, like checking on like frequently, but
if you like spilled a food or like anything on the table, they were coming around with their napkins, like wiping it off. Like they were cleaning the table while you were sitting there eating. And like, it was just a presentation. Like it was always presentable.
So just like a pristine, like dining experience all the way through. That's pretty cool. I would like that. It would be, I think, a lot to adjust to at first, because you don't expect people to like intervene like in that moment. Like you're like, oh, if there was like a spill, like, like that spot's probably going to be wet for the rest of your dinner. But then they're like, oh no, we're gonna go in and get that. I love that. Matt, great question. Thank you for asking it, and that was a great answer. Thank you for answering. But what's a question that you'd like to ask the next guest? You can go anywhere with this. I won't steer you in any direction. So what's something that you'd like to ask?
I don't know. Try to be funny or serious. I don't know.
It's anything that you like.
Okay. What is like a myth about adulthood that you learned as a child? Like something you learned as a child and you thought like, this is what it is. And then as you became an adult, you were like, that's not it. Nice.
So a myth about adulthood that was disproved like as you got older and like into it. Okay. Yeah. I got
you were like raised in it and you believed it to be fact until you found it to be not.
Gotcha. I like that. Well, I'm excited for our next guest to answer that question. That'll be a cool one. Yeah, I like that. I'm trying to think of like a good
the one that comes to my mind is like, I was raised in a Baptist culture, and it was like you go to high school, you go to college, and the joke was like you get your MRS degree, and so like you get married, and then like that's it. That's your life. It's like, so all of this is like leading to getting married, and then like that's it. And going through college, and I would see a lot of friends getting married, and I would just kind of feel like down that I was like, I'm doing something wrong. Like I'm not finding that person, like graduating, I'm not married, like, and like feeling like I was a failure kind of. And then the more as like society changes, and now I'm just, as years pass, I'm like, it's not true. Like you can, that's a lot of people's experience, but for those of us who it's not our experience, I don't want us to feel so like depleted or like, oh, we did something wrong, you know?
Right. And even in that moment too, of like, if that there's no real sense of like finality, like I feel very close to like what you're saying in that, like, oh, like you go to high school and then you graduate and then that's it. Like it's done. It's over. Like you've, that's like the peak or the mountaintop or whatever.
No one talks about what happens after that.
Yeah. It's like,
that is what happens.
I remember like graduating high school and then being like, well, like, I guess I'm like still going. It's weird that I'm like continuing on past this moment, I guess, like not like in a morbid way or anything like that. It was just like, I don't know. I was like, I thought this was going to feel like a much bigger culmination. Not that it wasn't special or anything like that. And I loved like that moment and the sense of achievement and everything, but it was like, yeah, I guess we're still doing more. I very much kind of relate to that of like, we're still moving on. Right? So we're still going. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's it. I'm excited to ask that question. That'll be a good one.
Yeah, well, I want to hear what people have to say.
So Celeste, any parting thoughts before we wrap it up for the episode?
Parting thoughts. I mean, going back to just like killing the stigma, I would say if you're listening to this and you don't know your status, go get tested. And if you think like you are not at risk of having HIV or whatever, just like get tested and know your status. That's the only way to know. And if you do have HIV, if you do test positive, there are so many resources. It is not a death sentence anymore. And I would just want to end that with like that positive and uplifting, like there's a life after diagnosis.
Excellent. We love that. Thank you for ending on that note. That's perfect. Well, that is going to conclude. That's it. Celeste, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. Love getting to talk to you. That's going to conclude episode 34 of When I Was Your Age. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we'll catch you in the next one.